you have tricked your mind into, I need something bigger. I need something that feels sophisticated and more mature. And all that is, it's your ego telling you that I need more, but it's not real. This is a great process. It makes you feel really good. All of the systems give you that warm and fuzzy, but only 5% of that do your external customers care about.
What typically breaks first when you see these over-engineered systems?
The people. It's always the people that break first. It's the associates that are involved with it.
What are some of the other signals that indicate that a system really has become overbuilt or is at that point of being bloated?
I mean, the first one is that no one uses said system.
Oh, do tell. Welcome back to Handled It. We're on set today. I'm joined by some old friends in Brent and Justin. I'm also joined today by one of the foremost experts when it comes to removing complexity from your facility, Miss Ashley Watkins. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys. Joe described me as the foremost expert. I don't know about that one, but I do feel very passionate about continuous improvement, and that is what we want to do. And that's what I see every day when I'm visiting customers, right? My team and I are going out into warehouses. We're looking at back office processes, and that's what I care about. I always say that I'm a process nerd, so that's what I like to do. That is what I spend my time doing and have been doing for quite a while in this space.
And self-proclaimed problem seer, which eventually becomes problem solver.
There you go.
Absolutely.
All the things. I know it's a blessing and a curse, I would say.
Because you see it all.
I see it all the time.
Well, today we're unpacking how good intentions in process design often turn into friction on the floor. So let me ask, at what point does optimization start helping and start getting in the way? And I'll open us up with this. Why do most leaders tend to over-engineer systems as operations continue to grow?
I'll take this one. I'll kick us off. So I'll say this. They don't intend to. So the question is, why do leaders that's not their intention. They don't mean to, but it happens. And a couple of reasons why. It's human nature that if you grow your business by $500 million or your processes are complex and your headcount grows, it makes you feel like as a leader, I have to create something bigger and better and broader. And that typically adds complexity to it. And it is, again, not the intention to over-engineer it. It just simply happens that way. When you are a CEO and you know everyone on the floor and you are clear on processes and you understand what happens, you feel comfortable. There's a control level that happens there, right? But as everything starts to grow larger and larger, you have now lost that control and you want to add some more metrics. And I think, Justin, you probably want to talk about some of those metrics and things like that.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. For me, it's the comfortability, right? It's, we all do it in our daily lives, right? I'm a creature of habit. Gosh, my wife will tell you that, right? Shower, shave, get dressed the same way, left sock on first, the whole thing every day. And so you go and change that environment in your personal life. The same thing, goes into what we see from our customers. There's a level of just uncomfortableness that has to occur to create the change that needs to happen for Ashley and our group to do what they do.
Yeah. Ashley, you said something just a minute ago. You were talking about as your role grows and as the organization grows, you get further away from the work. And I couldn't agree more, right? As a leader, like you lose touch a little bit with the people. Can you expand into that a little bit more? Because what I heard is the further you get away, bigger, broader, all of that doesn't necessarily mean better.
It doesn't. Sometimes the simple process that you were doing as an organization of 5 to 15 people, it worked for you at some point. Sometimes you just need to stick with what is actually working. And I think that's just, you feel like as you grow in headcount or size or revenue, whatever it is, you have tricked your mind into, I need something bigger. I need something that feels sophisticated and more mature. And all that is, it's your ego telling you that I need more, but it's not real. Sometimes that very simple process is all you need.
I got to swing to you because here recently we've talked a lot about basic blocking and tackling, getting back to the basics. And I mean, you're a big football guy. I mean, blocking and tackling is important.
Yes.
So talk to me, because Ashley has great points about bigger, not better. Moving these things doesn't always necessarily mean better. What's going through your mind right now?
Well, I have a lot of things going through my mind right now because, I mean, first of all, I was thinking about, your first question a little bit, which is people generally try and protect what they've always done and the way it's always been done. But the scenario you mentioned that we're in recently with a lot of new people coming in, they don't always know the way that it's always been done. So they come in with these great ideas, and they're good ideas for sure. But we all know through learning through our lean practices and continuous improvement that the best thing to do is to perfect the process you have and then build on it. So I think in the scenario that you suggested, understanding why you have to do that certain blocking and tackling is very important, and getting that into a habit type form, I think, makes it a lot better.
Yeah. And I think, as I'm sitting here listening to the comments y'all are making, right, sometimes adding all of this stuff, the complexity that is, makes you forget about some of those fundamental items that have to be done. So when you think about how some of that complexity is woven into systems and things like that, how does that start to blur ownership and maybe even hide accountability within an organization?
I mean, I think a lot of times is leadership potentially doesn't really understand what's going on fully, right? They're seeing it, depending on the levels in the organization, right? They're seeing it from their perspective. Maybe they don't truly understand the level of complexity that is occurring levels down. And I think that can blur their understanding of what needs to happen to create the change.
Right.
Well, I can attest to that, just to be vulnerable for a second. A lot of times, Joe and I will be having conversations, and, I'm far away from it, obviously, with the position I'm in, and I will assume that the problems are the same problems that I may have encountered along the way when I was more involved. And I'm like, well, why aren't we doing this, or why aren't we doing that? And he's like, Brent, we're doing this, this, and this. And then I said, oh my gosh, that's way above and beyond what I ever would even have thought of. So I think you're right. That is a big one, and it happens especially when you're in a growing space, but also a growing company. It's very easy to fall into that trap.
I think to accurately hold others accountable, right, within the organization, or, folks within the environment that your operation occurs in, you've got to have that baseline understanding. And if that doesn't exist, then you're really not truly able to hold them accountable to the details that are necessary to execute a complex environment.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about ownership in our day-to-day conversations. And one of the things I hear constantly is like, if multiple people own it,
Yes.
no one owns it. You're nodding, Ashley. So, I mean, going back to this whole blurred ownership thing, like, what's it look like?
Oh,
Because, I
man.
mean, if multiple people own it, no one owns
Yes,
it, what happens?
It's the analogy of if there's a garden that everyone owns, no one owns it, right? And someone is tending to it, but you cannot go back to that one single source to understand what is happening. And it's the complexity, which it sometimes is engineered on purpose so that as an individual contributor or as teams, they create the complexity for a reason, right? I can hide behind the complexity, and it's not just my name because there's greater visibility if it is just you. And then sometimes it's unintentional because we feel like we have so many different teams, and with it, it comes just interdependencies, right? I have to hand off to team one, and this associate has to work directly with another department. And so all of that, right, is blurred ownership. And then therefore, as leaders, you really struggle to hold a single person or a single team accountable. And we're not talking about retribution. We just want to understand the why. And it's really, really hard when you're talking about defect resolution to get to root cause when there are 15 different teams that own that process.
Feels like you're speaking from experience.
No, not at all. No,
I
no,
know
no.
that you've worked with a lot of
I
our
do, I
groups
know.
here.
Yeah.
And I, as you're sitting here talking about it, I think about it, right? I mean, it's the up and downstream processes, and like the number of times that you hear, well, that's not in my scope. That belongs to someone else. And so the accountability is diminished so greatly because, like, I don't own this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the key piece to think about is, and I had to learn this, I started my career as an individual contributor and also on the internal side. So I was not faced with external customers, and that is not what I kind of answered to. But I learned this over my career is that when I'm thinking about that external customer, whatever the industry or organization is, if you're thinking about that customer experience, you will change how you move and do your process because you're not just thinking about the other team member that I might be frustrated with or the other department that I might be frustrated. I'm thinking about what does the customer need? And I only care about that. So everything that I'm doing, whether it's blurred ownership or it's, it's not my monkey, not my show, not my deal, I'm only caring about the customer. That changes how you will operate.
What I'm hearing you say is when you understand the value add to the process, you can affect the outcome at a different level. Could you maybe share some thoughts around that to where I don't, you talk to it so
Yeah.
much better than I do?
Yeah. Yes, I think you're right. So when you're looking at a process, and we've done a lot of process mapping as a team and as an organization, we're talking about a 10-step process map or a 150-step process map. Typically, only 5% of that process is value add. And that's really, really hard when we start having these conversations with our customers around this is a great process. It makes you feel really good. All of the systems give you that warm and fuzzy. But only 5% of that do your external customers care about. And so when you think about all of the paperwork or the bureaucracy that I have to go through just to get a forklift out of the door, customer only cares, or service, customer only cares about 5% of that process. So when you think about it in like, okay, what is the actual value add for the customer, changes everything for you.
But yet we overcomplicate, overprocess, over-engineer. But going back earlier, because Ashley had mentioned most of this is done with the best intentions. And when I think about it, right, people are trying to protect performance and all of that. But how does this overprocessing really slow teams down instead of protecting processes? And I think there was a good example there of where we're adding in all this stuff, feeling really good, like we're adding value and we're not.
Yeah.
So where does that happen?
Ashley, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because we just had this discussion yesterday.
Oh.
It's a little vulnerability on some areas that I'm responsible for in this organization, but we, working through some process improvement and identified exactly what you're talking about, Joe, which is, there's a simple process and the deliverable to the customer is unfazed. What they see, what they feel is exactly what we want as an organization. The route that we take to get there is very complicated, over-engineered, too many people involved in the process. It's been layered and layered and layered over a number of years. And then what we've identified now is the opportunity that we've got 11 different, cooks in the kitchen on something that really needs to have 3 or 4. And so being able to take that over-engineered process and roll it back to something that still provides that exceptional deliverable to the customer, but internally for us now frees up our organization to go do things in, much better manners.
How do we end up getting there? Because I've been trying not to say it this way, what I'm getting ready to say, but it seems to me at sometimes you have so many different people getting involved. It's their perceived own value add to the process. So it's a personal need that the other person may have that, or area that might have that adds to this. Is that fair to say, whether it's our company or customers?
I think a lot of times it's area, and it's no different from our company or others out there, because a lot of others are very similar in that, you're responsible for what's in your purview, what's in your day-to-day, and not seeing beyond that is something that happens all over the place all the time, right? So we see that a little bit here, and words like silo come into mind, right? Where you can have that environment created that creates a struggle for folks to see beyond it. And I think that is where they feel really strong about owning their area, but how that impacts others and how that all flows together, I think can become.
Is the nature sometimes to overcomplicate their area though, so that they have more perceived value at times? I've seen that happen, not maybe with us, but at customers where they overcomplicate things. I think you were starting to speak to that a little bit earlier.
I think it's an interesting point to unpack, but I almost wonder if it's not the overcomplication, but it's just the hoarding. So I have a piece of it, And I see that this is now become something that's larger and it has high visibility. And so I want to hoard it, meaning that I'm not sharing with other departments and I'm keeping control of it. So maybe it's not that they want to overcomplicate it, but they are not playing well in the sandbox, right? Like they are trying to hold it and keep it. And we see that with customers that when we try and go down, we try and kind of loosen the reins and we're having these conversations with engineers or people that are working on a production line. They are holding that information so tightly that nothing can get in or out.
So we're starting to get into this space. I've heard a lot of talk around these systems becoming more complex, more bloated. And I would think a minute ago we were kind of talking about the complexity that may come with having to train someone to use this new system because it is so complex. But what are some of the other signals that indicate that a system really has become overbuilt or is at that point of being bloated?
I mean, the first one is that no one uses said system.
Oh, do tell.
No one is using the system, right? So in Lean, we always talk about going to the source. We want to make sure that we are going to whatever that source is. It could be the coordination group. It could be someone in a warehouse floor. But you want to understand what is actually happening. And when we observe customers, whatever the realm is, they're not using the system and or process that the leader has told us, yes, this works for us. This is great. We've invested a lot of money in this. And then we go observe, and they're not doing that
So
at
Ashley,
all.
does that typically sound like, so you go and say, hey, tell me about such and such, and they're like, yeah, we don't do that. Let me tell you how we really do it.
Yes. So if they're honest, right, they will show you the workaround. So the first piece is that no one is using said system. And then because they have to get something out of the door if they're production, then they're using a workaround. But the crazy part about it is that it's not even one team is using the same said workaround. It is native to one specific person. So whomever is at this station is using their own workaround. The person at this station is using a separate workaround, and it snowballs. Yeah.
So if we were to vote on the shop floor,
Yes.
whose system's best,
Yes.
which one is it? Because, I mean, it sounds like the workarounds, whether they're complex or not,
Right.
they're getting the work done. But from a scalability, from a training perspective, from a tribal knowledge, that becomes almost impossible to be able to pass along. So when you see that, how do you typically attack it?
Oh boy. I mean, the first piece is understanding what needs to happen. So just like regardless of what is actually happening, what is the end goal? So you kind of back into it that way. What needs to happen? And then you do a lot of times we find influencers. So we start to see who is the influential person on the line or the leader or whatever that looks like, right? Negative or positive. And we start to work through, is that a process that we can follow? And you start to build a process, and it's almost like you are piecemealing it together so that you can get to your end goal. But most times when people have a workaround, it is getting the job done. However, it's really inefficient in the way that they are doing it. And as leaders, especially someone who has invested a lot of money into that system, they would hate to see a workaround. But sometimes that workaround just needs to be your new process.
Got you. Jesse, you were about to jump in.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, Ashley, it's probably more of a redirect question a little bit, but what are some of the things that we're seeing in those instances where they may be achieving what their goal is, what the end result is, but it's very inefficient? To me, things that come to mind are overlapping processes, other inefficiencies that'll be very evident. What else am I missing there? There's some others that really should jump out at us, right?
So if you think about quality control, that there's a need for quality control in most environments, right? But if your quality control looks like the process 1 has done something, process 2 is checking it and then doing something different, process 3 is checking what process 1 and process 2 did, that is over-engineering it, right? That is no longer quality. That is redundancy. And you see that a lot when you are handing off, and there are a lot of handoffs and interdependencies, that everyone is checking what the last person gave them. And that's one of the examples that you could use.
One of the things that I noticed, this is at Carolina Handling, I'll hear things like, well, first of all, the process is being ignored. We do that sometimes.
Yes.
But my favorite, that's a joke, by the way. My least favorite actually is when I hear, oh, we don't have a process for that. We need to build one.
Yeah.
And I've been here long enough to know better. And we start talking about, I said, I'm not saying it's a good one,
But
we
there's
probably have one for it somewhere. How often does that happen outside of Carolina handling? I guess in some of your customer reactions,
It's that I hear it all the time, and don't take offense to it, because I see it and I hear it all the time. And people believe that they don't have a process because they choose not to follow said process, or because that process is inefficient. But what I always tell the customers, because that's the first thing
or
that
not
they
taught, right? They might not
Yes.
know because they weren't
or
taught.
they may
Yeah.
not know. But that's the first thing that I say to customers is that's the very first thing out of their mouth. We don't have a process for that. And very rarely do you not have a process. And I say, you probably have a process. It just does not work for you right now. But we hear it all the time outside of these
I
walls.
have an old stat that was given to me by one of my former bosses. And he said people don't perform either because they don't know how or they don't want to. And it's very rare that it's that they don't want to.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like 5% or less.
Yeah.
So it's usually they don't know how.
Yeah, and in our world, I mean, we keep saying processes. In our world, a lot of this is called standard work.
Yes.
And there's a lot of times where it's just never been documented. Like, this is our process. We should be able to train and repeat said process because it's standard, and yet it's just never been enforced. So, as we're talking about all this, sounds like there's a lot of weight on the people who are carrying these processes and things like that. What typically breaks first when you see these over-engineered systems, these over-engineered processes come under stress, whether it's customer demand, workforce demand, whatever it may be? What breaks first?
The people. It's always the people that break first. It's the associates that are involved with it. That's
So-
where you see it most evident.
Like,
Okay.
what do you mean?
Yeah, what does it look like?
Expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see poor work quality because they're rushing to meet those demands. With obviously an opportunity there for that. I mean, I think you're going to see turnover in the organization. You're going to see recruiting teams struggling to hire to replace because there's not a clear direction of the job function and what it should be doing on a day-to-day basis. I think those things are what you see in the people most evident.
I think that's a good one. I don't think a lot of people think about the morale of the team and the impact that it has whenever the situations are like that. You either, in the areas where we struggle and have struggled in the past, it's either that or it's a poor leader, maybe demonstrating the right. It's usually one or the other when you see that kind of unhappiness, I guess. I'm glad you brought that up because I don't think a lot of people think of that.
Yeah, I mean, we see it here and we see it in a lot of organizations. It's understanding that, to use the term culture that's thrown around there so often, but the people in the building have to believe in what you're doing. They have to believe in the process. They have to want to follow it every day. Again, to your stat earlier, folks come to work and want to do a good job and feel that level of fulfillment at the end of the day and go home and feel proud about it. And if it's broken or it's over-engineered and there's a struggle through it every single day, then you lose that really quickly.
So when I start to think about people, and I love you're talking about the burnout and the turnover and all of that. You talked about even the quality. I mean, this has an impact on safety because now all of a sudden people are abandoning processes to do what they need to do. And is their new process that they've self-proclaimed, is it getting the job done safely? And then you mentioned the morale. I mean, this all goes back to like SQDCM, whenever Ashley's preaching lean, like this is all about it.
Yeah.
So are there other things that break under this stress?
I think flows break. So what I mean by that is it can be just the flow of actual work and then a workflow. So if you think about it in working in a system, then if there is too much data, there's too much complexity, typically because it's technology, that workflow will break. But then the other side, these people that were subject matter experts that made decisions all the time are now have decision paralysis. And they can no longer make a decision because their stress level is so high and because this does not look and feel like every other time that I've made this decision. So similar to the people part of, they are now just so stressed in the workload and everything starts to shrink on them, right? Like the walls are closing in and it feels like this is a change.
going to change gears just a little bit because we've been talking about these people engineering their own processes, but there are people that do follow the processes, and specifically leaders who will defend a process that's in place. So why do teams and people and leaders continue to defend a process that doesn't work anymore? Why do you think that is?
There's the human factor that comes into play here to defend your role and function in the organization, right? I mean, it's
Almost
it's
a
a job
value
security, right?
proposition. Yeah.
I think that's a human element that
Okay.
absolutely exists.
I'll take it a step further. The human nature of it is safe. It is simple. It is easy. And when I mean when I say easy, I don't actually mean the process is easy because it typically isn't. They have done something. They're running and jumping through hoops to make this work, and it's not actually easy, but it's easy because I'm comfortable with it. So that's the key piece of the human nature is like, I know what this feels like. I know how many steps are in this process. Just just introducing technology sometimes around an Excel file that someone is doing it manually right makes people very, very uncomfortable. You're just like, I promise this will help you because lean does change lives. I promise this will help you. And they don't want to hear it because they are uncomfortable. And that's the key piece of the human nature is like, ugh.
I would agree. I don't know if you guys, the 12-Hour Walk, anybody read that book?
Yeah.
You know, the foundation of that book is exactly what you're talking about. People, if you had your scale of 1 to 10 and 10 being the best moments of your life for achievement we're talking about, most of the time when you had the 10 feeling, it was right before you had the 0, 1, or 2 feeling. But as humans, we try and push to the 4, 5, 6, 7 because we're comfortable all the time. When actually, if we were really trying to be great, it's counterintuitive, but we should be pushing ourselves to the 0 so that we can achieve the great. But I don't think that's natural.
Well, it's funny you bring up a book, and I know I've shared this with you guys reading about psychological safety. And we want people to come into Carolina Handling and from day one at like an owner in their role, to look at their process, to look at where can I remove complexity? How can I do it better? We talk about Kaizen all the time. But the other thing that comes to mind for me is like, do our associates and do associates out there in general feel safe to challenge leadership in a process? Or is there going to be repercussion? Because some of the articles that it references in that book are failures of large corporations where someone just shut up and I'll march and do what you tell me to do, and it cost them billions. Why do you think associates are so fearful in that regard?
I mean, a lot of times you're having a career and you want to look good. So taking the chance of not looking good is fear of success in my mind. It's not really fear of failure.
Right.
So that's my take.
I'll piggyback on that, right? I mean, it's the personal brand, the the ding on your personal brand if you did fail in that, in that moment, in that pushback.
Especially if the environment doesn't embrace making mistakes, because that's how we, as we've talked about before, get better is through we learn, we don't lose. And if you have the other mindset, though, where you have retribution or penalties, you're going to create an environment where you don't get it.
But for us, right? 900 associates, decentralized, we need them. We talk about associate-led all the time. And the need for those decisions, those changes. And granted, we want them vetted. We don't want people just the Wild West and making those changes. We want them happening. I have to think our customers, other than a production line where someone's walking around with a clipboard and a stopwatch today, because I know that still happens, but there's a lot of companies that have people in a hybrid or a remote workforce setting now that those decisions need to be able to be made and processes need to be changed, not in a more complex manner, but in a manner of simplification.
Sure. I see a lot of times when I walk into a warehouse with a customer, they typically have some grand idea on the wall or their ethos, whatever that looks like, right? Which tells me, okay, this seems like something that you would want to follow, and this is what you are projecting to your associates. And then I watch how they work, and nothing matches. And so I would have to assume as an associate, seeing those words on the wall are just a word wall. It's just words on the wall that we're not actually living by. So if I'm thinking about the human nature of I see what you have on the wall or I hear what you are telling me, but the actions don't align, then no, that person does not have that psychological safety to speak up. Even if they felt like, because there are some people that they don't care about looking bad or being wrong, right? There are those people that exist in this world. God bless them. But they also just are looking around and saying the words are not matching the actions.
Yeah.
And that's probably what's holding them back.
You opened us talking about best intentions. You're talking about companies putting their best intentions on the wall. But at the end of the day, those best intentions, when they cloud and bloat the complexity of a process, it really diminishes the return. So we're going to be talking more about that as we continue. Thanks again. Automation and technology only work when the timing and design are right. Carolina Handling helps leaders decide when to move forward, when to hold back, and how to build resilient operations at scale without breaking. Learn more at carolinahandling.com. All right, as we jump back in, obviously a bunch of experts here. There was an article that we read recently talking about software complexity and how it costs billions and drains productivity. And one of the interesting facts in that article was, I found this crazy, that companies are wasting 1/5 of their budgets on this software complexity, which equates to 7% of their revenues. I'd love to hear your take on what spoke to you in that article as we continue this conversation around complexity and processes.
Well, the first thing that jumped out to me was, thinking about myself as a consumer. This is what I do in these situations, right? Revert back to what I expect as a consumer. And I want simplicity. I want to hit a button on my phone and a product shows up 2 days later, and that's simple. That's easy, right? We do it in a lot of things, right? We're always looking for the simplest way. Why don't we do that in business more? Why do we not see that more in the business environment that we're in? So when I start reading this article and I'm thinking through the software adoption and the challenges and the amount of money that goes into it and all those things, I keep reverting back to the simplicity thought.
So does that mean we pause right now and go figure that out real quick? Because I hear you. And I think everyone listening today probably wants that answer. Why do we continue to try to make it more complex over electing to look for simplicity?
Well, if you think about it, almost every software solution is a bolt-on to another software solution. It doesn't matter. Look at your iPhone. How many apps do you have on it?
Sure.
And yes, they've perfected the, how that works compared to what general businesses can. So I've always, software is great, but the more you have of it, the more complex it gets. It also clouds your data. In a lot of cases, you don't have the right kind of information, and it can put you in some, what I would consider very difficult positions as an organization. Also, it can limit you, if you're not careful, to speed of change, because you're so reliant on the software that you have at the time. So as we, grow and add more and more and more, I think it becomes a more limiting factor. So it's easy to say, why don't we just make it easy? But I think the funny thing is, the irony is they're trying to make it easy by adding the software.
Yeah, I thought
it doesn't make any sense.
I thought you were making fun of me there for a minute because
Well,
I
I
was
like to
sitting
do
here
that, but
thinking,
that's
and
not
I'm
what I was
like,
doing.
all right, Brent, you got me, because I go into my iPhone and click on an app, but then I have to go to another app to get a password to then go back to the other app to get something that I need for another one. And complex is an understatement. But Ashley, what did you take away from the article?
I think a couple of things. I applaud them for coming to that realization, because sometimes organizations, especially large organizations, are stuck in their ways, and I have invested money into this and we are going to which that's just morale for the associates that are using that system. They are very frustrated, right? So I applaud the organization for realizing that, hey, there's an opportunity here. But I think the key piece for me is just I'm going to start asking questions of these organizations. And for anyone out there, if you're talking about, I've created this system, or I've adopted, or I've invested money into this system, what did it look like? What did your process look like before? So we always say in lean, you should work with the manual process first before you add equipment. And by equipment, I mean technology, right? And so I have to wonder, like, what did your manual process look like? Because what you should be doing is taking the successful steps of that manual process and then adding it or creating that system, right? Like, it should be based off of what your people know to do. They're just no longer having to do that manually. Like, if you think about, like in shipping and receiving, I'm no longer using paper pick tickets, but the process is the exact same. I'm just scanning a barcode now.
Yeah. I think it was this article that they mentioned most people think that complexity equals sophistication. And I go back to what you said, and like, I'm no programmer, I don't understand software, but in my world, it's the KISS method all the time. Keep it simple, and I'm okay calling myself stupid. And I think we probably should apply that more frequently, but yet we go back to, do you guys believe that complexity does equal sophistication, or that people believe that?
I think you're right. I think people believe that
Believe
it
it.
does. You know,
Yeah.
I'll go back to what Brent was speaking to earlier around software being a bolt-on to, something else. I mean, we see it all the time in our interactions with our customers. And if we go look in the mirror, some of that probably exists here within Carolina Handling, but but we see it all the time, and it ends up clouding the vision of the organization on the direction they're trying to head, because the challenges they'll face with the cost of change, to back off of one bolted on software solution, because it's going to peel the onion back further and further and further to ultimately understand how that all needs to integrate together. And we have those conversations quite frequently.
One thing I noticed with software, and maybe it's just me, but it seems like the more people want to bolt on software, it's not for the person doing the job. It's for somebody else to monitor who's doing the job. In a lot of cases, when your processes aren't proper, it really doesn't matter after that anyways. You're not going to have the right kind of impact. But they feel like they need to know more, so they want to hoard more information for themselves because they feel like they're actually pulling the levers. And it's, I think, a false premise of where it starts.
One of the number one groups here that has a backlog is our programmers, where people are asking for information. I thought you were going somewhere different with this, because I think sometimes the people requesting the software are the people that want it for the people they think aren't doing their job up or downstream. Because we've got several processes right now that, there's some log jams in places, and the people who are requesting the software, their process works just fine, but yet they're trying to fix someone else's process that they don't understand. And yet they just think we'll apply technology around it.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. If you like, what I was thinking from is more of like large companies, and they have a big brother type of a mindset, and they feel like they know best, and their decisions come from the top down. So anytime you have an organization that's built like that, it normally has a lot of different software or metrics or information flowing up.
Yeah,
But
thank
it's
God we're
not
not
really
measuring mouse clicks.
Yeah, it's not really, helping the people that actually have influence on the customer,
right.
Their customer, but they think it is. And so it starts out that way. It's what I'm just saying, it's human nature. I think, I got to do my job. I need to know this, so I need X. And I think that's similar to what you're saying about some of our leaders when they ask for software change. It usually is they're trying to figure out something.
There's the request for software change, right? Which is probably a misled thing, that people think that the software is going to fix their problem, right? Address something upstream or downstream.
Right.
We see it quite often, especially in the automation space. In the Intralogistics Solutions group, we're out interfacing with clients, consulting on how to fix their labor problem, fix their, redundant task problem, fix all these problems. And we're adding in conveyor systems, we're adding in AGVs, we're adding in a labor management system to address the labor problem. And all of a sudden, all of those things have to communicate and talk to each other. And there's a software that's talking in between. There's middleware in between each one of those. So, you start to fold all of that on top of each other, and then drive the metrics back up for leadership to look at. It becomes very complicated very quick.
Complexity seems like an understatement. So, but love the thought, love the debate around where this is going. I think we all are landing in the same spot. Like, simplify the process, apply the right technology, apply the right software.
Execute the process too.
There you go. Awesome.
We share additional insights and continue these conversations on LinkedIn. If you want to go deeper on these topics, connect with us there. Let's keep the discussion going.
Really excited to get back at this. Going to see if we can pick some fights in our agree, disagree segment here. So here we go with question number 1. Clear documentation improves execution more than informal knowledge sharing. Just waiting on the guy that's supposed to be improving productivity.
Yeah.
We ready?
It
Flip
has to
them
be
around.
legible.
What we got? Agrees? Uh-oh.
Disagree. That's a D. D for disagree. I'm already breaking
Not
the
an
process.
O for on the fence?
No, I'm not on the fence on
Okay.
this one.
All right. So who wants to start?
Well, you guys can all gang up on
3
me.
against 1.
I was going to say, I
do
like the
think-
naysayer
all right,
to start.
You're going to make it real hard on yourself if you let me go first.
Let's see how hard you can
All
make.
right. So informal knowledge sharing to me is teamwork. And when you have a team that's functioning at a high level with an outcome in mind, a lot of cases, they're better than the standard work. I could give numerous examples where our associates come through when they're not following the process and come through for our customers. They do it all the time. And we also, if you think about some of our previous discussion we just had, there's no processes that are documented. So how the heck are they so successful in what they're doing?
I'm just waiting for Ashley to come back and say, Brent, if it works so well, why isn't it the new standard? But I can jump into that camp.
One last thing I just want to say, and you guys tell me this, not just for our customers, but for Carolina Handling. Where do we keep this clear documentation?
Well, I mean,
I thought that was the
We
filing
keep
cabinet
it on
in
the
office.
internet.
there's plenty of files for it.
Oh, files in a
But-
drawer. I get it.
But
Oh.
I will say, we have always said, if you have to make a decision and there isn't a clear process on it, if you act in the best interest of the customer, the company, or your peers, we're going to support you. So I can see where that disagree comes from.
I cannot see. So here is, I mean, the process nerd in me is jumping out of my skin. So a couple of things. If you have this, you were calling it teamwork, I'm going to call it tribal knowledge, but it's the same thing, right? It is something that is in someone's brain. It has been in a conversation around best practices. Those said best practices should be documented because it's used as a training tool. For most organizations, they have a lot of opportunity with training and onboarding. It's a key piece that we see a lot of our customers saying, can you just help us with our onboarding process? But I can't help you with the onboarding process, and I can't shorten that lead time to get someone up and running if there is nothing documented
Can I
and
ask
it's
a
all
question
in
just for
said brain.
clarification? So this documentation that's kept in the file drawer?
It's not in a
No,
file
wherever it is.
drawer.
He
We
said
don't have
that.
It's in an
filing cabinets.
e-file.
Either way, e-file, wherever it is in the
Yes.
web or in the cloud.
Yes.
Those computers.
When our customer receives their forklift, to your earlier comment, do they say, man, I'm so glad they have that clear documentation? Or do they say, man, I'm sure glad Carolina Handling came through for me?
They like the value add aspect of getting a forklift delivered.
Ah,
No question.
all joking aside, I believe in documentation. Y'all know that. I'm just trying to play some devil advocate.
Well, the thing that went through my mind was the game of telephone. So when you start talking about informal knowledge sharing, and I tell you something, and then you tell somebody, by the time it gets over here,
It's
like,
missed.
yeah,
2% of the
no way.
actual process, yes.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the next one. Standardization limits innovation more than it enables it. We've been talking about process improvement and all this. I mean, I forgot. I could have just added a DIS on the front of this, and
Or you could have just switched. Remember? All right, I'm going to show
all
you.
right, are we ready?
Hold on.
Oh God, he's drawing pictures.
I'm going back to
All right, here we go. What we got? Disagree.
Is that on the fence, sort of?
No, I'm circled the A. That's agree.
Oh.
So now all I have to do is remove the circle for the next vote.
That is too much.
All
work.
right, so to be fair, we did put Brent on the spot last time when it was 3 against 1. So we've got 3 disagrees over here. Why are you disagreeing?
In my mind, it allows for a better understanding of, what's your starting point? Where's the baseline? And I've said that before, right? It's, when you have the standard work in place, you know where your jumping off point is for you to then go take it and attack innovation.
Got you. Ashley, what were you going to add?
We see a lot where we want our associates to share Kaizens, right? Continuous improvement opportunities. But what we see a lot is that this new associate doesn't have the understanding of the baseline, just like Justin was saying. They don't understand all of the intricacies to the process. They're just in their mind, they're trying to make that process better. That's where standardization comes in of like, this is where I need to start. And then there's absolutely an opportunity to build upon that.
So I answered this question mostly thinking about outside of Carolina handling. So if you think about it, a lot of people use lean principles, but they might not talk in lean language like we do all the time. So in my mind, standardization to most of our customers are rules and things that you're supposed to follow. And so if you create that kind of mindset within your culture of your organization, you do not get the growing and continuous improvement mindset that we're looking for when we talk about standardization.
Man, I love you bringing that up because I went through a course a long time ago. Sue Bingham, if she's watching, she'll love hearing this. It was called High Performance Workplace. But there were 8 rules that diminish innovation and spirit in associates. And one of the key things they talk about is all the rules and things that are in place because you don't expect people to act like an adult. And like, we've got adults coming to work. They adult all the time. They're raising families and they're people in their communities. Like, and sometimes those rules do get really, man, you're starting to make me waffle.
Oh,
and
I
come
wasn't
back
even
into your
trying.
camp.
I'll try
All
a little
right.
harder on the next one.
Number 3, teams perform better with well-defined guardrails than with full autonomy.
Brent in this circle.
I'm hoping it's just a circle.
It is. It's not a picture.
All
Lauren
right.
would not allow me to do.
We got disagree,
Refuse to choose.
refuse
That
to
wasn't an option. Where's your standard work right
I
here?
make up my own rules.
Okay, there we
around
go.
it.
Okay.
Her
All
own
right,
process.
I can't wait to hear. Why are you refusing to choose?
I go first?
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to hear these arguments. No. I want to hear these arguments. I have the rebuttal here.
What do you think about guardrails, Brent?
I think they're. All right, fine. You want to hear what I really think about guardrails? It's why you put the bumpers up at a bowling alley. It's because you're not a very good bowler. And the same thing goes for associates. I don't want them to feel like we put these guardrails up to where they can't perform outside of the guardrails. So yes, that term, maybe it bothers me. I prefer our associates to be empowered. You all know that. And I want them to be making decisions in the best interest of our customers themselves and Carolina handling in that order. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my reason, and I'm sticking to it. Maybe until
Maybe.
You want to
If I
add?
can-
until you
can I
change in
hear
my
You
mind.
want to add? Actually, it feels like she's ready to take it to the mat, but
Brent
I wanna
wants
have
to
a
allow free open swim in the ocean. I think we can have it in a pool, maybe not.
If you
with the
can't learn
lanes.
that you can swim before you get out there, that's your problem.
Yeah, I do agree that the autonomy piece is such a huge empowerment tool and creates so much growth in the individual, in the team, and then the organization as a whole relative to processes and everything that's involved with it. I do believe that there is a level of guidance that needs to occur, but I don't think it's in the form of stringent guardrails, stringent rules, things like that. I think the level of autonomy and trust, again, you talked about we're hiring adults. They're adulting every day. Let's let them go do that, right? If your hiring practices are right, your onboarding and training is appropriate, like Ashley mentioned earlier, then you should be off and running.
these are all great points, but I feel like Ashley's on the top rope. She's getting ready
I'm
to
jumping
come
down.
off. So Ashley, refuse to choose.
Yeah, so all of these arguments, right, are fair and they make sense. But in real world scenarios, it's not, I literally cannot choose. I promise I tried to make a decision on this one, but I'm refusing to choose because this is such a nuanced statement. And there are so many situations where there are teams that you simply cannot trust. And then there are situations where there are creative spaces that don't have a lot of regulation that, yes, you have a lot of autonomy to be creative and to be innovative. But if you're dealing with a very highly regulated team and or one that you simply cannot trust, then those guardrails are absolutely necessary. And there are a couple of different reasons. We're talking about lack of trust. We're talking about if your hiring practices are great. FYI, sometimes they're not. And you have a bad hire, and sometimes you have a lot of bad hires. It's too nuanced to say that I agree or disagree.
Okay. Well, we're going to.
Let me help support her a little bit,
Okay.
because I was on the fence on this one. We have certain things. We have compliance that we don't really have very many options with.
Agreed.
And we're always going to make sure we follow those. But that's kind of defined by the job description and the roles and responsibilities. But
Well, the good thing is in other episodes, we unpack culture and how to build that trust and the things you're talking about. But until then, here we got another question. Optimization is a continuous requirement, not a phase that ever truly ends.
drum roll.
We're all on the
Oh,
same
okay.
There you
page.
go.
All right.
How odd.
There you go.
The queen of continuous improvement. We'll let you go first.
I mean, if I said disagree, my team would murder me. It's
Do we
just-
need to get your crown to wear?
I do.
So you're saying you put agree out of fear of your team?
Oh, pressure.
It's the consistency. Hey, if it's not one thing, I'm consistent. Yeah, I mean, optimization and continuous improvement, you need it. It is what should be, right, for organizations, their foundation and their starting point.
Gotcha. Any other thought?
I can't. I mean, she nailed it, but just it has to, once it becomes a mindset, I mean, you're really rolling with it is all I would add.
It is Kaizen. All right, last one. Well-designed processes reinforce culture more than leadership messaging alone. We ready? Flip them over.
Oh.
Oof. Pin
Look
me
at
down.
We're gonna put
you.
you on the spot now. Yeah.
Oh, I'll just pass it back and say I'll let you three go first.
Oh, as the moderator, you're gonna.
I mean, y'all should have more content than I do.
you know what that means, right? You guys know what he's doing, right? He's like, you throw your arguments out there. I'll argue your arguments. I won't argue my point. That's what he's going for.
No, all right. So I'll jump in just because I was baited into jumping in. When I think about well-designed processes reinforcing culture, it sets the expectation from the very beginning. We've said it, talking about onboarding and all of that. Like, it provides that roadmap of what the desired outcomes are when you're looking at that. And I get it. Leadership messaging is reinforcing it, but like from the beginning, those processes in place given to our associates, I think it reinforces that culture.
So just to challenge, how do you create those processes? Doesn't that begin with the leadership messaging to create the mindset around continuous improvement?
Well, let's go back a few minutes because, I mean, we've been talking about our associates understanding like how the work gets done and how to improve those processes. I think the leadership encourages the associates to want to go and look at our process, to want to continually improve. You know, this is something that we're struggling with a bit right now in getting our associates to really have that ownership, to want to drive and realize that Kaizen is about me, making myself better, making my process better, and getting them to dig into that. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think both have to live in connection with each other. I don't think one exists without the other, right?
I agree.
The process and the leadership messaging all have to blend. And it's going to ebb and flow in some organizations and some teams to a degree, but I think they absolutely have to coexist.
Awesome. Nobody's bleeding. Nobody's
You don't think
bruised.
it's you don't think so? It's not a chicken and egg thing. I could see what you're saying, but if the leadership isn't reinforcing, you can't have one without the other. So that's why I lean slightly the other way. If you're not reinforcing those, can't have it. Also, if you're not, if you refer back to the conversation we just had around empowerment and the guardrails,
Yeah.
I think it's more important that the messaging is there so that they feel comfortable challenging the standards.
Well, it felt good being baited into going
You
first.
did all right.
Felt good having that spirited discussion. So, thanks.
Next time, we're asking a question every leader feels, but few admit. Are you managing data or drowning in it?
Remember, scale isn't built by adding more. It's earned by subtracting what no longer serves you. Until next time.